Man, this is something you never want to have happen in your church. And we're going to learn about it today. This is a church that's currently going through conflict in Juneau, Alaska. It's Resurrection Lutheran Church. There is a news story I'll link to in the comments below, but this is a story we just don't want to see anywhere. It's two different sides of leadership that are heated in a heated dispute, each group claiming rightful leadership, and it has escalated to the point where there are serious allegations flying around. We're talking serious allegations: assault, theft, sabotage. It's just crazy. As church leaders, what can we learn from this one case to ensure our churches don't end up in similar turmoil? Over the years, I've taken special interest in church conflicts and leadership debacles, not because of the salacious nature of the stories, but because I don't want churches to continue to go through really bad times of leadership crisis. And that's why I'm here on YouTube, to share a lot about church health and what we're doing at Chemistry Staffing. But what I want to talk about today are really 5 things that I think we can learn from this church in real time as they're going through some real struggles. 5 key takeaways that I think would be important for you as a pastor or a church leader to put into place, or at least think about, when it comes to your church and potential conflict down the road. And here's the first takeaway, and this Resurrection Lutheran is learning this in spades right now, is stick to your church's rules and procedures. So at Resurrection, part of the conflict there right now that they're going through stems from disagreements over leadership roles and whether proper procedures were followed in appointing leaders, removing leaders, all of that, which should have been in the church's bylaws. And this highlights really how crucial it is to adhere to your church's established governance procedures. And I am amazed at how many churches don't have some don't have any governance procedures in place. So that when conflict hits, boy, you're in a whole world of trouble because you're making up the rules as you go. If you have governance procedures, if you have rules, you need to follow them. And when decisions are made transparently and according to those rules that have been agreed upon, that are already on paper, it really does help to get you through those times of disputes over, in this case, legitimacy of leadership and who's actually in charge. So that's takeaway number 1, is if you have church governance, stick to those rules. When you're going through conflict, you have to stick to the rules. You can't make up new rules. You can't change the rules of the game when you're going through it. So stick to your church's rules. If you don't have rules, get some. Rule number 2, or things number 2 that we're looking at today that we can learn so that our churches don't go through what this church is going through, is you got to have the governance, but then you have to keep the lines of communication open. Really, that's where, from what I can tell from reading the article, that's where the situation really escalated, is when the communication broke down, and then all of a sudden you've got different factions, different people making serious allegations, and that really just suggests to me that it was a pure communication breakdown within the leadership and within the congregation. And you always need to encourage open and really inclusive dialogue that can help address concerns before they spiral into these major conflicts. Major conflicts don't happen when there's open communication. They just, I guess maybe sometimes they do, but they don't get out of hand like this. Regular forums for discussion, ways to have these conversations are absolutely valuable, and you just have to do them if you're going to avoid this full-blown conflict in your church. Takeaway number 3, I think this is important. Have conflict resolution strategies in place. And this should maybe be a part of your bylaws as well. If we do have a concern about something in our bylaws, or if there's a conflict in our church, what do we do? How do we get through that? And the dispute at Resurrection has made it all the way to the courts. And that really should never happen. And what that indicates to me is that any kind of conflict resolution mechanisms that they may have tried, It didn't work. They were either lacking or just absolutely ineffective. If you can get strategies in place like mediation, having mediation or involving denominational authorities, and the denomination did get involved in this dispute, from what I can understand. The denomination came in and said, they took a side. They said, we're on this side, and the other side did not acquiesce to that authority of the denomination. If you're making up the rules on who's going to mediate and who you're going to listen to, even if the denomination comes down against a side, you're going to be in trouble. So make sure that you try and have those conflict resolution strategies in place, especially before there's any conflict that happens. And then number 4, be really transparent with church finances. And finances is where so much, there's moral lapses and things like that. But after moral failures, conflict in the church really happens a lot of times over finances. And in this case, it's no surprise, there have been accusations of financial mismanagement, unauthorized withdrawals from the bank account of the church. There's been accusations of unpaid bills that have led to disruptions in service. So maintaining that clear and open financial records really does build trust with the congregation. And a lot of times, I think, if you have good, transparent church finances, it's going to eliminate or at least mitigate some of these disputes that can come up. And then number 5, you just have to stay focused on the church's mission. If you're constantly dealing with internal strife, you're going to get off track. And that's what happened. You've got 2 main factions, from what I can tell, at Resurrection, that it's amazing, according to the newspaper article. I'll put the link to it down in the comments. Both factions are continuing to operate the church. At least they were up until recently. Overlapping functions. They're still doing worship services. They're still doing the weekly food pantry. However, I just can't imagine how the effectiveness of these ministries hasn't been compromised by this ongoing discord. I guess it says something that they're able to keep moving as a congregation, but man, what a distraction. Keeping the congregation focused on its core mission, nearly impossible. Fostering a shared commitment to service with everybody united, no, that's out the window because there's these internal divisions. I don't want your church to deal with conflict. Maybe you're going through conflict now. Maybe it's not as bad as this church where they've actually had to go to court, where you've got somebody saying you need to leave and the other person saying I'm not going anywhere. Maybe your conflict hasn't gotten that bad, but every church deals with a little bit of politics and a little bit of conflict. My advice to you is write down these 5 things. Really look at these 5 things. And if there's anything you can do now to avoid conflict getting worse or blowing up into some kind of a big storm that gets the media and the courts involved, if you can take those steps now, that's really important. I mean, we really need to strive to keep our churches focused on mission and to prevent as much of this. We're God's people, right? We're God's people. We need to love God and we need to love each other. We got to get on with the work of God and get away from the conflicts. I hope this is helpful to you today. If it was, hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you here again soon. Leave a comment as well. Tell me what you're going through. Tell me maybe one practical tip that you've got that would help your church, or maybe something that has helped your church to eliminate conflict, or at least help it not to get so blown up out of perspective.